Hey guys, I really wanted to redo the last video, but I promised myself to not do anything, not do any editing on these videos or any redos. So I wanted to continue on my social anxiety journey. So we were talking, I was talking about being in graduate school. The first time I was in graduate school at the University of Georgia, and how it was such a difficult time for me socially in terms of my social anxiety as well. And it was so painful that I got really, really angry one night, and I was basically screaming in my room and really hoping for a reprieve, which did not come. But I had a sense of hope, and I I mentioned about how I applied to do a TEDx talk, and before you did a TEDx talk, you had to go through a competition, and I did not make it, and I was really awkward during the competition. But I had this belief since then, which I have lost. So it's not like I kept this belief that I would um, I can get better at my social anxiety, but it planted the seed for me. Then I was depressed, really depressed for 2 years, to the point of not being able to come out of my bed. And social anxiety was not the only factor, but it was a major factor of that. I had this incredible sense of hopelessness regarding my own condition. But so I want to uh, okay. So from then, um, I applied to do the TEDx talk again, and it was like difficult, but I had more motivation to do it. Um, and so the funny thing was that actually the day I thought about, hey, I remember last year I applied to do a TEDx talk. I should check up on that. And I looked online and I realized I only had 2 hours to apply. So I sent in the application and sent in a video of yourself speaking, um, some sort of idea of what you want to share, and the application was accepted. And I had this team to help me, and they were really lovely. They helped you do the preparations for your speech. And I remember the day I was on that stage and looking upon the audience of 800 people. And in the middle of that stage time, in the middle of my speech, I remember having this, like, I was almost like observing myself. And I was thinking, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm here. I'm speaking in front of all these people. And it was a really moving moment for me. Um, I'll have a link to the talk down below, and people always tell me like I did not seem happy when I was doing the talk, or and honestly, I wish I could have done better. Right? I think there's a lot of people with social anxiety. They have this sense of perfectionism. So like even with my last video, I felt like I just made on social anxiety. Um, I thought, well, I really wish I could just redo that, but I promised myself no, right? Um, but I just remember, yeah. But I remember I was regressing in that speech, and what I mean by regressing is that I've made a more simple version of the speech than I prepared because I was so anxious that I cannot think about some of the newer ideas I wanted to mention about. But since that speech, I thought it was going to be a panacea. So, the hardest thing that you could possibly do is to give a public speech. People fear that much more than death itself. So if you were, that's like the ultimate social situation to contend with. but it was not a panacea. And I realized that though I could give a speech in front of people, that especially with one-on-one situations or like there's a few other people that you're speaking with, um, I still remained so unable to articulate myself and really clumsy and awkward and very uncomfortable. Um, and still, even speeches themselves took practice, but actually, that was my relative area of confidence since the TEDx talk. And since then, the TEDx talk gave me more motivation, but I had still many periods of like giving up. But I decided to start organizing meetup groups when I moved to New York City. And it started with the MBTI, New York City MBTI meetup group. And it was so strange because I always thought, like, when I was growing up, I hope people would at least invite me to their events and I'll be the ones sitting quietly in a corner. But I ended up being person inviting people. So by running the meetup groups, I would invite people, and I would be very quiet, but people come came to me because I I had something, which is the meetup group, and I was willing to organize and get people together. And I remember this time I was living in Queens where uh, that's what I would do. I transferred that skill over, so I knew that people would show up so long as you're like you have the space and you're organizing. And I just remember in a weird way I was in the center of a social group among people who are interested in MBTI because I had an interest in the MBTI. I was willing to get people together from the meetup and get them to my house so that they could hang out. And I was still quiet, and I always like wonder like if people why people would want to hang out with me. It's like I think it's just because I was willing to do everything else. Like I didn't have the social skills, but I was willing to do everything else to get people together. And I was determined to be consistent. And I think that's what mattered. And still, like, I remember like real being proud just looking at. I found in my computer plans I've made to be able to what to do to get people together to organize social events, and I just appreciate that commitment. But even after that, I was still very socially shy and I did not know how to articulate myself. But then, as you know, I may know, like I have my MBTI YouTube videos, and they started kind of around the time I did the TEDx talk, and they really helped me. I spent basically hours practicing in front of a camera just to know how I sound like. And you may think my videos are very short, but actually I've done many redos just to perfect what I was doing, right? And I realized when you focus too much on perfection, you don't actually get to what you want to do. It's more like practicing all that time in front of a camera allowed me to tap into the intuition about how to just freely express myself. I'm still learning that craft, but through the meetups and then through that sheer determination itself and practicing in front of the camera, um, I gotten better, and I decided I want to give back. So I remember one of the first groups I joined in Meetup was the New York City Social Anxiety Meetup group because I was so inspired by that group. I am inspired by that group because they really make the commitment to have all these social outings. It's actually the most outgoing of the meetup groups, ironically, even though there's people with severe social anxiety, even. As I think it's because we learn through kind of like duality in a way, because as people with social anxiety, we're so focused on connection that it's always on our mind. So we're trying to address that sense of connection. That's why people with social anxiety, they focus on creating these social events with the focus on social connection. And how you help people in your life is from where you needed to heal in your own life. And I think that's true if you have social anxiety or not, whatever you struggle with, that is where you help people heal. And um, later on, I became an organizer and still am of workshops for people with social anxiety, bringing in my skills as a psychotherapist. So I learned to be a psychotherapist in my second master's program. So I have two masters. That's why I call myself a mama. Um, um, and I want to be a psychotherapist because I thought like I went through a lot of healing um, uh, of my own, and then I wanted to give back. And so I started to lead this workshop now twice a week for people with social anxiety. So that is my journey. And maybe later I'll share more. I don't know, but that's it for now.